everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 18 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to do some weaving. Now this is not proper weaving or typical weaving. This is just my kind of weaving. Because of I'm doing the Roxy Creations, a couple of weaving videos showed up like in my feed, and it was like, oh, and I clicked on them and I really found it very interesting. Now, I don't have like a weaving loom or special needles or anything like that, but I really wanted to try it, and I really liked the ones that were just more organic. So I just had to try it then, so I made up my own way of doing it. So like I said, this isn't the proper way to do it, but it might give you an idea as to whether you like weaving before you go out and spend a bunch of money on a loom and a needle and all of that kind of stuff that they use. Because I found that what I've done, I'll show you what I've done. This is the very first one that I tried. Let's see if I can get it in here. And so I was looking to see if I had the board I wove it on, but I don't see it here. I just wove this on a piece of foam board, wrapped my string around it, and just did it very freeform. And I really liked the way that it turned out. So I went ahead, put it on some cardboard, and framed it. So, and I really do like this. And, I left that sticking up there, and I left these hanging down because I like the way that they looked. It's one of those things where you can do it however you want to do it, so long as you're not like having to do it the specific way that the weavers do it. And of course, they do whatever they want to do too. They just do it more properly, I'm sure. And then the next one that I tried, and neither of these are completely done yet, but this one, I still need to add my balloon strings on the balloon for this one. But I really like the way that this turned out. And what I did was I just drew the balloon, and then I weaved the balloon, and then I weaved all around it. And I love the way that it turned out. So it definitely doesn't go in this, well, it is going to go in this frame, but this frame will be painted because the frame is way too dark. But I cut it to fit this frame because I really liked, it's got this little decorative work on it and everything, and I thought that that would just be a nice long frame, would be great for a hot air balloon. So, but these are the things that I did, just playing around and doing it, we'll just call it the improper way. So, I just gathered together a bunch of bits and pieces for fibers, and so this is kind of, I worked on a sample, and also so I could show you how I'm going to end it off. So this is the one that I've been working on. I weaved this just this morning. So it doesn't really take a long time, but I'm going to show you some different ways that I do the weaving. And like I said, I kind of watch them, and so some of them might be the right way, some of them might not be the right way, but they still work. So that's how I'm going to show you how to do it. But I think this is cool, and I'll show you how I take it off of here when I'm done, when we're done with, just getting some started a little bit. So the first thing you're going to want is a piece of foam board. And so you're just, it doesn't matter what size it is. Maybe a small one would be fun to start with, just because you get it done faster, so it feels more accomplished, and then get bigger as you go. You might want a bigger one because you might want to do a lot of big floofy stuff, and that wouldn't work really well on a small one. So, but we'll start with one that's just we'll just go medium size. So what I want to do is, you want to make sure, so this is called the warp threads, the threads that you weave through. And you want to make sure that you have them in groups of 2 and in an odd number of groups of 2. So I have 1 group of 2, 2 groups of 2, 3, 4. I have 5 groups of 2 or 10 strings. But you just want to make sure you don't want 12 because that's an even number of groups. You don't want 12 strings. You would want another 6 and 7. So you'd want 14 groups of string, or, strings in general, which would give you 7 groups. Now, that has to do with the way it weaves and stuff, and that is something that I was just told. I wonder, on my first one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. On my first one, I had 17. So it wasn't even groups of 2. So, you know, you can play with it. But they say that that works better. So I'm just going to kind of give you that tip. And that is what I did here. And it has to do with if you're under on one side, you're under on the other or something like that. I don't know. Okay, so this is how I did it. I just went ahead and I drew a line at 1/4 of an inch down across my board. And I'm not going to do this one really super wide either so that I can show you a few stitches and get from one side to the other before, you know, so it doesn't take forever to do that. So 1/4 of an inch down. And that's where I'm going to cut my grooves in. And like I said, this is not like a regular loom, but hey, it works. So, and then what I'm going to do is I did all of my little, my warp strings at 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to just, and then I left 1/4 of an inch on the edge of my, well, my first one was at 1/4 of an inch. So that left 1/4 of an inch over here. Okay. So I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to mark every 1/4 of an inch. Until, and then let's make sure that we have one group of 2, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do I want to do 2 more? That's, no, we're going to go that far. Okay, so this is where I'm going to cut it right there. Alrighty, so this is, it winds up being, I'm going to cut this at 2 1/4 inches. Okay, so then I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and I'm going to make my line at 1/4 of an inch. I always make 3 marks when I'm making a line because that lets me know if I'm off with one of them. Lets me know that they're all straight. Because if you do 2, you could have one up here and one down here, and you could still easily draw a line to it. So, all right, and then let's do our 1/4 of an inch. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we're going to cut it right there. Okay, so the easiest way to cut foam core board is to use your X-Acto knife. It cuts very nicely, and don't try and cut through the whole thing all at once. Because then a lot of times it will pull your foam a little bit out. It won't be as nice straight of a cut. So take your knife and just first cut through the paper. There's paper on the top, foam in the middle, and paper on the bottom. And then give it another cut and to kind of cut through the foam. And then one more cut, whoops, to cut through that bottom piece of paper. And there we go. So this one I was cutting fast, and see how it like caught the foam all along there. So you don't want to do that if you don't, you know, you just want to try not to do that. It's much smoother if you take your time and cut through in grooves. So now what we're going to do is we're going to cut each of these little bits here down to that 1/4 of an inch mark. We're going to cut them down. So you want to make sure that your knife is not sticking out too far when you're doing this. Make sure that you've got it locked in place like that. And so then what I do is I just go ahead and I just cut straight down in that spot. When I get to 1/4 of an inch, I stop. And then what I do is I just kind of give my knife just a little bit of a twerk. And that way that just opens up that little, it just opens up that gap just a little bit. So just a little bit. And if you don't do that, you can still get your string in there. That just makes it just a little bit easier. And I'm just kind of trying to watch to make sure I stop at that 1/4 of an inch mark, because I want my strings to basically all be the same length, although at the end we're going to tie them. So it's not going to make that much of a difference. So we're just going to do this all the way across on both sides. And that's going to make our loom for us. There we go. Okay, and then we're just going to do it here. Oops, cut that one a little deep. And if you cut it a little deep, that's okay too. You can just kind of stop pulling on your string when you get to that point. But like I said, this is not the proper way to weave, I'm sure, but this is a way that you can do it at a very reasonable price and just make it be your own. And you know, as an artist, you do whatever feels right to you. It doesn't have to be all of these rules. You know, once somebody told me the word craft meant like craftsman, if you look it up. And a craft is like something that you have studied and worked at, and, you know, you really know what you're doing. And so technically, you know, if I were to really do the craft of this, it would be the correct way, the right way. Because those people that do it that way, it is their craft. They really know what they're doing, and they're doing it in the proper way. I, on the other hand, don't really necessarily like to follow rules. And a lot of times it's partly just because I don't have whatever it is that they have. So I just figure out how to do it myself. All right, so what I've done here is I've just taken a piece of our string and put it through the very first groove, and then I'm going to tape it down. I took it out to put it back in because I made it too long, and I put it back in the same spot. So just get that out of there. Just going to tape it down. It doesn't matter where it's, you're not going to be in your way or anything. We'll remove that later. Okay, now what you're going to do is you're going to wrap your string through the same line at the bottom, and then keep your string tight. You want it to be tight. It doesn't have to be like so tight you can't make it any tighter, but you want it to be really quite taut. So just go ahead and just keep going around and around until we get to the other side. They kind of bent that over, so I'm just going to push it back. And you can reuse this loom once you, if you cut your, I should say if you cut your weaving off of it. My balloon weaving, I specifically cut my piece of foam board exactly the size of my balloon, knowing that I was going to keep that and use that as to mount it inside that frame. So a lot of people might leave it right on there and use it to just mount to their wall. So, you know, now you can put it in a frame. So you don't have to take it off of this, but I will show you how I'm going to take off the one that I did this morning. Okay, so once you get all the way around, so we have one group of two, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have 5 groups of 2. And if you'll notice, this is closer than this. To me, that doesn't make any difference. And I haven't found that, you know, like it was noticeable or anything. So just going to cut that thread off and tape it to the back. I'm going to put my tape on the string. And I just want the tape underneath these warp strings on the back. They don't necessarily have to be, but that's just the way that I want it. So, whoops, and I want to keep it tight. If I don't, see how that's just really loose? When I go to work on this, I might pull that out. So I want to, that's why I taped those two down. The first and the last wrap, because we want to make sure that they don't move. So there we go. And you want this warp thread to be something that's not super stretchy, because you want it to stay nice and tight. So once you do that, then you're just going to weave. Now, the one thing that I learned was it's nice to weave a few parts at the bottom that will just kind of like be your base and kind of hold things together. I took a piece of my string, Just put that one over there. Just take a piece of string that I'm going to use to weave back and forth. And then take a piece of masking tape. And I'm just going to put the masking tape on there on the string like this so that there's some masking tape at the top. I'm going to fold that over the string. And then I'm going to kind of roll it up nice and tight. That's going to make that string kind of hard on the end or very solid. It'll make it easier to go back and forth through the warp threads. Now, I'm going to show you something that we're going to pick up for next week, which you can actually use for this project. And we're picking them up for next week just because I found them and I never thought about it until after I had done all of this. So I didn't think to put it in our group for this week. But these needles come from the Dollar Tree. It's a weaving set for hair weaving, and you find it in the hair product section at the Dollar Tree. But there is a curved needle, which works really good with a really, I don't know if you can see the hole in there or not. It's got a really nice size hole there. And then there is one that it's got a bit of a curve to it, but not much. It's pretty straight. And again, a nice good size hole. And then you have one that has a good size hole and has this shape to it. So these are $1 at the Dollar Tree, and I am going to put them on next week's list so that we will have them. And so if you haven't gone and bought your stuff and then you decide, yes, you do want to try this weaving, pick these up at the same time. Because a lot of people like to use the needles. Now, I have tried them and they work well. I really kind of prefer myself. I like doing the weaving part just like with my hands, just because that's, you know, I like that tactileness of it. So, but it is nice to have it kind of solid at the end, especially when it's just one thin string like this. So, all right, so now what we're going to do is we are just going to go, and remember how we have groups of 2? At this point in time, that doesn't make any difference. We are just going to go under and over and under and over. So I went under the first one, over the second, under the third, over the fourth, under the fifth, over the sixth, under the seventh. And all I do is I just lift up that string, leave that string down, lift this string up, leave that string down, and that's the last one because it's under, over. So, and then you're just going to pull it through, and then you're going to push it down nice and tight at the bottom. And when you push these tight together, they really lock things together. So now that we went over this last one, so now to go back the other way, we're going to go under. And I'm going to turn it around because it's easier for me. So now we're going to go under this one, and then over this one, under this one, over the next one, over, under, over, under, over, under, and over. And then push those down a little bit before I pull it kind of tight. Now, when you pull on it, to pull it tight, make sure that you don't take the string and pull it way over here. So you just want to pull it to that string and then go ahead and push it down. And this is just called a plain weave. So, okay, now we were over here, so we're going to go under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Push it down and push it down nice and tight. And you make yourself like a nice little base of these stitches. So on this one, I think I did about 7 I went up like back and forth 7 times. And that gave me about 1/4 of an inch of a nice base to hold things on. So I'm going to just show you these types of stitches on this, but we're not going to finish this whole thing because it takes a while. So, and so then the next one that they did was fringe. And when they did their fringe, they did it with like 2 or 3 pieces of yarn in every bit of fringe. So that's what I did here because it was the first time I tried fringe was on this one. And it got really quite thick. Because originally I was thinking this would make a nice bookmark, but with this fringe on it, it's not quite so, it's a little bit too thick. But that's okay. But so what they did was they just took their yarn and took 2 or 3 pieces. So what the one girl did was she wrapped it around her this before she put the warp strings on so that she wouldn't cut her warp strings. So let's do 2. So we're going to need 2. Okay, we're going to use 2 strings for this. So I'm just going to wrap a bunch because I can use them in snippets later. I don't know how many I need and I could figure that out, but since we're going to put 2 of each string on each grouping of 2, that would be 10 strings for 1 layer. So let me see, I'm going to leave that there. To make it easier to cut, I'm just going to cut it in the middle, like that. Okay. There we go. Okay, so, whoops. Oh, okay. Now, once you're done with this, and you read the back and forth as many times as you want to, because this is on the upside. If it's on the underside, I just leave it. But because this is over the last thread, what I do is I just go back under just that thread, or some of them go part way through and then cut it off. I go over and then just bring it back over here and leave it because I don't know if I'm going to want that to just hang down or not. So that's why I don't want to weave it in. Okay, now we're going to do this knot, the fringe knot. So they take 2 or 3 pieces of yarn. So we'll take 3. Okay, you fold them in half to make your fringe. Now, what you do is, we're going to put it over top of 2 of these warps. So you're going to set the middle right on top of those 2 and hold on to it. And you're going to put these right threads under the right warp. And normally I'm not holding it up like this, so it's a lot easier. But so put these right ones under the right string, and then put the left ones under the left string. Just like that. Then once you do that, kind of check and make sure that they're about the same length, especially if you cut them the length you want them. I cut them long, and then I can just cut them off at the end. Then what you do is if they look good, you're just going to take those, slide them down, and then pull them tight. And it makes a knot. And it gives you the start of your fringe. So did I do 3 on that one? I think I did. So again, we just did these 2. Now we're going to do these 2. And I did pull that a little bit tight to pull those together, but it is going to pull them together. But once we go ahead, and I'm going to leave this sitting on the table, we're doing the next 2, or string 3 and 4, and I'm just going to do it this way so that you can see it's not as hard as it looked. Okay, so we're going to go the right part of our thing under the right side, and the left part of our fringe under the left string, because remember we're working in a grouping of 2. Pull it, make sure they're even, pull it down and give it a little bit of a tug. Okay, and then you're going to do that all the way across. So we're going to do these next 2. So I'm just going to do the right side. And it's easier to do it just up here where there's extra, how do I want to say that? A little extra give to your strings about halfway up. Okay, and then left under left, make sure they're about even. slide them down, give them a pull. Okay, so we've got 2 more to do. And then what we're going to do, okay, so right under right, we're going to do 1 more set of them above. And you can do as many as you want to. You know, you can go as tall as you want to. I like 2 because it kind of covers up the gap. And this is really thin. They normally, for their fringe, use thicker yarn than what I have here. Again, folding it in half. Right side over the right. And if you have something that's super thick, you don't even have to have like 3 of them. You can just do 1. Like they use wool roving, which is really thick. You can just do this with 1 piece of wool roving. Make sure they're even. Slide it down and give it a pull. Okay, so once we've done that, we're going to go back in and we're going to do it again. But when we do it again, we are going to do it, we're going to skip the first one, and we're going to do these 2, and then these 2. So we're going to be doing the right side of this one and the left side of this one. That's going to kind of pull those back over, and it's going to put your knot right here. So it's going to cover up those spaces. And I did not do enough of the yarn, so I'm going to just quick do a little bit more so that you can actually see what it looks like. And actually, I think did I wrap this the wrong way? Maybe, maybe not. And of course, these are going to be different lengths because that's all kind of back and forth there, but that's okay because we're going to trim them up at the end anyways. Okay, so do I have enough to do? All right, so this time we're only going to wind up needing 4 of our sets of 3. So again, fold it in half. And now we are going to go with these 2 strings, or if you're counting the strings, string number 2 and 3. Before we did 1 and 2, and then we did 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. This time we are going to skip number 1, and we're going to do 2 and 3. So I'm just going to, again, hold them on the middle, put them under the 3rd string on the right side, go under the 2nd string on the left side, make sure that they're about even, pull them down. And see, as we pull them down, they're going between these 2 knots that we did. So we're just going to pull that down. And now it covers up that gap. And so we actually are only going to need 4 this time. And then because I didn't like this sticking out on the end, I went ahead and just put a couple just around just that 1 string. Okay, so I'm just going to go up here, go under the right side of my 2, under the left side of my 2. Make sure they're kind of even. This one's really quite off, so I'm going to kind of pull on this side a little bit. There we go. And then slide it down, give it a pull. And we just have 2 more of these to go, and then we'll go on to the next one. And I don't know what these are called, and there are lots of weaving videos out there. And, you know, so you can go ahead and watch those. But just remember, if you just want to try it and see if you like it, because I'm enjoying doing this right now, but I can tell you that more than likely what's going to happen is shortly I'm going to be on to something else. So, because I seriously kind of got a bug in my head and thought, I'm going to go to Joann's, because Joann's is the only craft store we have close to us, which still isn't close, but we're just going to slide that down. I'm going to go to Joann's and I'm going to buy a weaving thing, and I'm going to buy some yarns and, you know, like fat yarns and you know, and then I thought, Amy, no, you're not, because more than likely I'm going to do maybe a few more of these, and then I'll be on to something else. So, you know, if I find that I'm going to do it forever, there are a few things that I, you know, do a lot. There are things that I like more than other things. And, you know, so at that point, those I wouldn't mind buying stuff to go with it. Pull that one down. Okay, so now see all of those gaps. And see, here we still have, you can see between the knots, but they're not gaps of the bottom of our actual work. It's covering that up. So now that is all completely covered. So that looks cool. And then because that string's on the end, Okay, I'm going to, I want 2 strings, and I'm not going to cut anymore. So I'm going to take this one, I'm going to fold it into a loop like that, and now I'm going to take that loop and put it under this first one, and then put my 2 tails through it, just like you're tying like on the top of a tag when you put ribbon on the top of a tag. Well, maybe. There we go. There's little fuzzies on this yarn, which makes it hard. So we're going to just do that and then just slide that down, because that just covers up that first string right there. And again, I'm not cutting these shorter for any reason other than I'm too lazy to cut more off of the ball. Okay, so I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to put the loop under my thread, take my 2 tails, and bring them through the loop, give it a bit of a pull, slide it down. There. So now that covers up that very last string also. Okay, so then another one that they did that I think is really fun too, and this is really nice to do with something like your lace or your strips of fabric, because it makes it even more poofy. All right, I'm just gonna cut some of that off because it's a mess. Okay, this is kind of like a backwards weaving or something. All right, so I don't know how they start, because I don't like to start by just going under the first one. So I'm going to go under the first one. Okay, now these strings. Now, when you have the strings on your fabric, I like that, but in your weaving, they do get in the way. So if you kind of start seeing them, you want to cut them off as soon as they show up, so that you're not winding up getting them, they get like knotted around your warp strings. Okay. There we go. All right. So we're going to do this kind of wrap. Let's see, what do they call it? Do I know what they call it? No, I don't. Okay, so there we go. All right, to start with, go underneath, and you can start on either side, it doesn't matter. And since you're going to go back and forth, you know, one way is going to be easier for you than the other. All right, this one we're going to be wrapping around the next string, but coming backwards. So, but for the first one, I am going to, now, whenever you're weaving, you pull all of your, whatever you've got going on, all the way through. This is what we're working with. Okay, so then I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to wrap it around this string. I went under, and then I went over the string and back out. And just kind of pull that down. So that just holds that on that first one. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take whatever we're weaving with, and we are going to come across the second string and back underneath of it, and then pull all the way through. And it makes kind of a little, it's very bumpy. So then we just did the second string, we're going to do the third string. We're going to go over the third string and back underneath and pull it towards the way that we started. And that's the thing, everything you have laying around will get stuck in your strings as you're pulling them through and throwing them around if you're not paying attention. Okay, now I just got all those strings tangled up here. There we are. Get those way out of the way. Okay, so that was the third one. We're going to do the fourth. Go over the fourth and then back towards the beginning and give it a pull. So, and the thing is, you don't need to tighten these up as much. Leave them kind of big and bulky if you want. You can tighten them up if you want. You do it however you want to. Okay, I like them kind of leaving them bumpy. So now I'm going to go through the next one. Go back towards the beginning. And watch our, and really we should take these maybe and put them under there so that they don't get caught as bad. Okay, just pull it around and push it down. And like I said, with this one, remember you don't need to pull it tight. Next one, go over top of it, go underneath of it, and go pull it back towards the way. Whoops! Trying to do it fast is not easy. Okay, there we go. Now, where's the start of my thing? Go under the next one, back towards the way we started. Push it down. Next one. Back the way we... Now, you don't want to make... You want to make sure that you don't go like through your loop here. And with your fabrics, a lot of times they get kind of twisted as you pull them through. I don't untwist them. To me, I think that that looks nicer even. Okay, so I'm going to go over top of the next one and then underneath of it towards the way I started. And the last one. And then I'm gonna do it really quick. So once you get to the other end, okay, so then what I do is I go under this first one to get me facing the other way, basically. Because right this second, my thing is facing this way. I want it to be facing this way. So I'm going to go under the first thread, warp thread. Okay, and then do it the same way. I'm going to go under the next one, or go over it, and then under it, back to, see, now we're starting here, because we're going that way. Back towards the start, and push it down. Go over the next one, and under the next one. So this is some kind of like a wrapping weave. It's not your standard just in and out, in and out. Okay, so I'm going to go over the next one and under it, and making sure, see, this is here. I don't want to pull it through there because that's my loop. So I want to make sure that, you know, my loop is out of the way to make sure that I'm not going through the center of it. Push it down. Okay, go over and under, making sure that I'm not going through that loop. And I have gone through the loop a few times. It doesn't, you know, I mean, it's okay. Everything is okay because what we're doing here is organic. And a lot of people say, oh, well, you just say organic because, you know, like that way you don't have to do it the right way. Well, technically, yeah, kind of, sort of. But also just because I'm not looking for that perfection. It's going to hold down no matter what. And if I like the way it looks, I'm going to leave it. Now, if I don't like the way it looks, if I went through that loop and I didn't like the way that bunchy part turned out, I would go ahead and I would take it out and do it again. But if I like the way it looks, then why do I have to take it out? Just because it's not the way that it is supposed to be. And that, you know, that's the biggest thing. To me, that's what organic means. It just means it really did what it wanted to do, and when you look at it, it was right. It looks nice, and you like it. So then you leave it. Okay, so there we go. So that is like that. I'm going to say that's maybe like a wrapping stitch or something. So now, normally I would do it one more time so that my tail would stick out the other side, which hopefully you don't mind. We're going to go ahead and do that anyways. I'm just going to really quickly, I'm bringing that under so that I'm facing that way now. And then I'm going to go over and back towards, because now we're starting right there. Over and back towards the beginning. The next one, over and back towards the beginning. Don't want to go through that loop. And the next one, over over and back to the beginning. I think that pretty much, like, these are the only, like, things I think pretty much that I've learned. So we're getting close to the end here. So this is kind of like a backward stitch, and then you've got your regular plain weave, which is the one we did first, across the bottom. And then we've got the fringe, and then any of these you can like go under 2 over 2, under 2 over 2. You know, you can do all of that type of stuff, and under 2 over 1, maybe under 2 over 1. You know, just play with it. You know, see how it turns out. You can, as you're going this way, like I said, sometimes mine gets twisted and I don't untwist it. I leave it that way because it gives it even a cooler look. But you could even at some point go, I want this to hang down there, so I'm just going to keep going now and leave that there. I don't want to, so I'm not going to, but you can. You know, you can, if you see something and you like the way it looks, you know, you like the way it's hanging there or something, then you just, you know, say like there, okay, I like the way that that's hanging down, so I'm going to leave it. To me, creating something, it's all about the creating. And now this one, I'm going to let it go through. It's going through the loop because I'm hoping that that will kind of catch it down a little bit and hold on to it. So now I'm just going to cut that off at any length. I decide what I'm going to do with them later. So, yeah, so we did the one going backwards, and we did a regular stitch, and we did this one. So then, you know, maybe, and they tend to use a lot of, like, more than one piece of fabric. Okay, now I can see that this thread is on top of that there, so I'm going to go over that. Okay, I'm going to go, first thing I'm going to do, because I've seen them do this too, and this does help sometimes. Okay, I've got really thin threads, and I'm not going to do a whole bunch of them, because the more weaves you do, the tighter they stay. If you're only going to do 1 or 2 rows, sometimes they get kind of loose. So I'm going to tie this right around that first thread so that it will stay there. Just push it down there. Okay. So from here, we can just do over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1, over 2, under 1. And there we go. Now, you would do more of this so that you would see it more, but now we're going to go over 1, under 2. You want to make sure that you do the opposite of whatever you just did. So you don't really want to go like over 2, under 1, because like this locks this down. Those two are being held, those two are over, and these two are under. So that's what locks it together. That's what makes it a weave. Over 1. Okay, so I'm going to go under 2, over that one, under those 2, and over that one. So there we go. Now you want to make sure that you don't pull this loop. No, you know, every time you're going back and forth, don't pull this too tight to pull your thread way over there. So, and you can just do that as many times as you want, and then just knot it off or just leave it long, tuck it in the back, whatever. They do a lot of tucking in the back when they're done. And if you want, you can leave a loop as you're weaving. I did that here. So as I was doing this last line, I just went over there, and instead of pulling it tight up against my thread, I just left the loop stick out there. And then I just did that on each end as I went, and so now I have these little loops here. So that's the kind of weaving thing that I know. And like I said, you could try going around and tying knots. You could do all sorts of things. You know, this is your creation. Create it however you feel like doing it. So now to keep it all together, so this is what I'm going to do. With my very first one, when I cut it off, I just cut it off and let it hang there. Let me show you the back of this. So those are just hanging out there. The weave is right here. There's nothing to hold them on there. So what I did was they are glued lightly to this cardboard, but also I went through and I sewed it. I sewed all of the edges to hold this in here. And so that it wouldn't come out. So then when I watched another one because the lady I watched, she didn't take hers off of her cardboard, and I wanted to. So they tie these. But what I'm going to do is, because they're all nice and tight, I'm going to start like in the middle. So I'm going to tie, and you want to start from here because the back looks a little bit different kind of. All right, so there's one set of two because we're going to tie them together. So there's two. These two are my middle one right here. These two on each side of this bit here. Those are my center two, because I don't want to get off, because then I could have one over here and one over here. So I want to make sure that I've got those center two. All right, so I'm going to cut those. And I'm going to come onto the back, and I'm going to come down here a little bit and cut them. And then I'm going to pull them off, pull them up here, back through, and I'm going to tie a knot. And that, what that's going to do is that's going to hold that all together. And I'm just going to tie a double knot. Now, you know, there's like different, you could do square knots or whatever you want to, but I'm just going to do it like that. So now that's going to hold that there. And the reason I'm doing it this way is because I figured that this way, it's still holding everything nice and tight. If I take it off the loom, which when I took my first one off the loom, I was a little bit surprised on like how loose it felt. It wasn't falling apart or anything by all means. I just thought it would feel more solid than it actually did. So I thought this way, I don't have to worry about dealing with that looseness as I am trying to tie my knots. And I'm just kind of tying it in the middle so that I have lots of string left here, because I'm not sure what I'll do with this. So I might want to tie these strings to something. I might want to let them hang down in the front. So I'm just going to leave them on there. And I'm kind of cutting it in the middle on the back, because that just gives me a little extra length in case I want to tie them or something. Alrighty, so now, let's see. Now the first ones, that as I was weaving on the first ones, I kind of tucked them in behind my strings. I didn't tie them or anything. I just tucked them there to keep them out of my way. And so I'm going to just get all those out of my way. And I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to do these now. And leave those, I'm going to leave the outside ones there. And there's, see, that's what I was saying about, you got to be careful about your back strings. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. I believe that these are center ones. So I'm just going to pull those through to the front, and again, just tie those in a knot. And then we're going to be able to see, as soon as I get these all tied, we'll see what it looks like with it not being on the front. Because I don't know. I haven't done this part before. And I pulled that really hard. I really made a mess up here. There we go. When I was trying to pull it out of there, it like caught. Okay, so we just have a few more here and we'll be done. And if I did it wrong, you know, I would just tie it to another one. The basic thing is that you need to tie them. If you tie them in a knot, no matter where they're tied to each other, this stuff cannot slide off because there's a knot there. So, you know, so if you do it wrong, don't worry about it. So here's my first one that's taped down. And it's because of the tail that you want to figure out from the front where's your center and which ones to tie together. Alrighty. That one and that one. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this one unhooked too. So that I'm not doing all of this that I'm doing right this second while everything is off the board. Okay, I'm going to tie these two. Get them out of the loom, our loom. There's like a square knot, like over, under, under, over. I never could figure that one out, really. Used to have to do that with my daughter's horse when we'd braid its hair. And like every single time I had to say over, under, under, over, and literally like watch what I was doing and try and figure it out, like over. So that one went over. So like now it goes under. I don't know. Anyways, I don't have to worry about that anymore. I just need a knot. And okay, we're going to do this one and we'll have our last two, one at the top and one at the bottom to tie. Oh, there it is. It's coming off. Starting to see. And the thing is, when you take it off, you might actually decide that you like the looks of the back better than the front. Remember not to tie these knots. Because it was being held so tightly on the loom, those ones didn't make a difference. But this one, when I tied the first knot, it really pushed down a little bit on that. So you want to be careful about that. So there's what the back looks like, and that doesn't even look bad. We might even want to leave these strings hang down behind the blue. And there we go. Now I like this weaving. I really think it's pretty. And I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I don't like this piece of lace sticking out. This is going to be my front. But like I said, you could decide that the back would be your front. But I don't like this lace for sure sticking out. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it over. And I'm going to find a place in the back to tuck it into. And you can use like one of your skewers. Let's see. There's a skewer. And just find a place that's on the back. You don't want to, push it through to the front. I'm going to kind of twist it up a little bit to make it a little more solid and easier to get. And I'm just going to put it on the flat end, not the pokey end of my skewer, because the pokey end will just poke through it. So I'm just going to put that there. There's a string. And I'm just going to push it under that. Oops. I'm going to push it under that string. Now, if you had the needles, you could thread it onto a needle, and then you could put the needle through there. That works really well too. But since I don't have one yet, I'm just going to do it like that. And then I'm just going to let it hang down there. If I want, I could take it and tie a little knot in it. Like that. And this one kind of wrapped back with it. That was the tail for this. And I think I liked that tail hanging out there. So I'm going to just pull it back out there and see if I like it. It's sticking out pretty straight, but I'm still going to leave it because I'm not sure. I do kind of like that. So this lace I'll tuck in because I don't like that. I think that the lace is kind of, how do I want to say that? And I'm going to use my pokey end and just kind of try and poke it. You know what else? I think what I'll do, which will be much easier, I'll just get a little bit of needle and thread, and any ones that I don't want to show out on the front, I'm just going to tack them back there with the needle and thread. So I'll decide if I want to cut these off, maybe because they're all different lengths and some of them don't stick out. Maybe just leave the ones right in the middle. And these ones, because if I'm going to hang it, these will hang down nicely. They'll drape down. And so I'm going to leave those. I'm definitely going to put that one to the back. The lace. I may leave those on that side and tack back these little tiny threads here. And then maybe get a stick from outside and tie those around a stick to hang it from. I think that that's pretty much what I'm going to make it look like. Tuck those behind there. And actually, this one's hanging kind of nice, so I'm going to leave that out until I decide for sure. But there we go. It may not be your mama's weaving, but it's Amy's weaving. There we go. I hope that you like that. I hope that if you play with it, you have a good time. I have been having a blast. So I'm going to be back to show you what we need for next week because I think I'm running out of time to get this to upload. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate you. And then just really quickly, for next week, all we need to get is, we need to get the needles if you want them. So that's $1.25. And we are going to use our tissue paper. So actually, we don't need anything else. We don't need to pick anything up for next week, but let's pick these up for $1.25. And we'll need our tissue paper and our stamps, our markers, and that type of thing. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.